Hi everyone, Natasha Rosewood here. Uh, Sorry a bit late. Facebook would not let me live, but I'm here now. So welcome to the topic today. Are you feeling sad? A lot of us are, and the easy for you. So if you don't know me, my name is Natasha Rose, and I am a spiritual healer, quantum healer, past life regressionist, author, intuitive, of course, and I also teach development. If any of you are looking for something to learn at this time, this would be the great time to do it. So before we get into the topic, I want to thank you all so much for so many of your birthday wishes I got yesterday, cards, balloons, videos, donations to my suicide prevention charity, which actually managed to raise $455. So I don't know if it's just a birthday thing or we can just um, keep that going because ultimately through this pandemic, I really want to be able to do my online course for teenagers and young adults. Hi, Steffi. Thank you for joining. And Deb, I was worried that I was talking to myself. There. Hopefully, you can hear what I'm saying. So, even before this pandemic, a lot of us might have been walking around with unresolved grief. And that can feel like a low-grade flu in itself. You can feel tired, bored, stuck, hopeless, anxious, or even worse, depressed. So now going through the pandemic, we've got other losses on top of what we're already dealing with. So it's a really important time to really be checking in with ourselves and saying, how are we doing? Way to know if you're dealing with unresolved grief is that sometimes you'll just feel angry and it's for no reason. Somebody didn't close the door properly and you're feeling like people are disrespecting you and you might fly into a rage and you might wonder why. Well, the reason is that you're not dealing with the thing that's making you angry in the moment, but it's reminding you of maybe a deeper issue or a greater hurt or pain. For example, maybe when you were 17 and your parents were getting divorced and nobody was asking you how you were feeling. Nobody was listening to your pain. And, you got caught up in the conundrum of everybody else going through their chaos. So we went into a situation like our current pandemic. And I know that this is definitely being amplified. Everything we're feeling is being amplified. So you've got to look at what's being amplified within you. The great thing about this pandemic is, as I said before, it's giving us a great opportunity to look at ourselves. How are we doing? A lot of us are facing demons, especially if we're on our own or just one other person. It's giving us an opportunity to look at what don't I love about myself and where do I need to love myself more. And especially grief can make us feel like we're not as good as other people. It can make us feel low. What it physically feels like, and I see this in a lot of clients, feels like a big lump in the stomach. And it's so important to deal with grief as it comes along because if you don't, it builds and builds and builds. And extreme unresolved grief can actually lead to insanity or physical illness or severe depression. So it's like somebody putting a weight on us and going down, down, down. So we've got to do what they call pushback now, and we've got to look at our grief. But the problem is in our society, we don't encourage people to talk about their sad feelings or feeling down, or we're told just suck it up, get over it, just be positive, it'll go away. Well, that's not going to work. And while I'm a great positive thinker, it's always being in the truth of how you're feeling. Otherwise, you're disempowering yourself. So I've got 10 ways that you can absolutely visit your grief and lessen the weight of it. So number one is really feel sorry for yourself and your loss. So whatever your loss is That's yours. Whether it's your stamp collection that got lost, or your house burnt down and you lost everything, or somebody died and you weren't allowed to go to their funeral, your loss is personal to you, and nobody else can tell you how you should feel about that or how long it's going to take you to get through your grief. But the sooner you grieve and the more deeply you go into the grief, the sooner you will be past it and you'll be able to stand back and look at it as something that happened, but it doesn't have the same attachment to you as it did before. So just wallow in your grief for a little while. Number two is really please give yourself permission to cry. Cry, men and women and children. Crying is so good for you because when you cry, those toxins that you bring in your body come out through your tears. And when I do readings, often people will cry. I feel mean, but if I'm not touching on the truth of what somebody's really going through and giving them the opportunity to express that grief and that truth, I'm not doing my job as a spiritual healer. So I encourage people to cry, whether you do it alone or in front of other people. And sometimes you can be crying just because you're moved. It's not always a sad feeling. Hi, Jerry. Thanks for coming on. It's always great to see people's names here. Number three tip, vent your anger or rage, but without hurting yourself or other people. I'm very sad to hear that the women's shelters are definitely increasing in numbers. They're getting a lot more people showing up. And that just tells me that there are a lot of angry people out there who are not dealing with their grief in the appropriate manner. So just saying something like, if you're feeling that rage or you're feeling that anger or you're not hurt, you can tell that person, you know what, I'm feeling really angry right now. And that other person needs to say, okay, I'll give you your space, or do you talk about it, or what would you like? How can I support you in getting into that anger? Because underneath the anger is the hurt, is the pain. Um, something you that the angry person might say something you did or you said just triggered an old memory. So it's an opportunity actually when you get angry, when those feelings bubble up, say, what is that really about? Was that about when my dog died at 10 and nobody really cared about me? Or, I got divorced and everybody was on that other person's side, nobody heard me. It's an opportunity for healing. Number four, share your story and your pain with someone you trust. That can be tricky to find sometimes. I know this from my own experience, which is probably why I ended up going to a lot of psychics. But it's very important for you to share your sadness because when we share it, it gets kind of hard. And it's not about dumping your sadness on other people, but it's just saying, this is a story that happened to me. And if that same story happened to somebody else, you might be really empowering them. So you can share that pain and that lessens the pain. Also, you need to be validated. Uh, I sometimes a lot in my practice, people will come to me and I say, something awful happened to you when you were 4 years old. I can feel the energy of it. I don't need to know what it was. And I have one lady that just burst into tears when I was able to nail this experience for her. And she cried, and I said, you need to go and see a counselor that can really help you with that particular situation. And she did, and that dealt with her underlying grief, which was wonderful. And that stopped her actually from bringing that pain forward into her marriage and perpetrating more pain. So she could be happy again and really enjoyed a good marriage. Number five is let the perpetrator know how to feel. So, alive or dead, if somebody came to you and was very abusive, for example, or they stole from you, or they did something horrible. In court now, what do they call victim statements? They let the person who's been wounded or stolen from up in court and express their pain and their anguish from the crime that happened. And that's very empowering because it puts you on the level playing field again. When we've been hurt or wounded, we often feel like we're less than other people. So stand up and say, you know what? That was not cool, did. And I kind of call it giving back the brick, not allowing that person's bad behavior to land on me. And this kind of leads to number six, forgive yourself and others. So it's a curious dynamic, but sometimes when we get hurt, we get burgled, our house burns down, or we get assaulted, we sometimes think it's my fault somehow. I let that happen. And I think it comes from this fundamental place of we really do love ourselves, and we know we're a piece of God, we're a spark of the divine, and somehow we allow ourselves to be treated less than. First, we forgive ourselves for putting ourselves in that position, because that's what we did, we created, then forgiving the other person. If you could do one thing, it would be the forgiveness. All my clients come to me, somebody they've lost has died, and they had a fight on the last conversation, or they didn't tell them they loved them, or something was left done or undone. And it's so important because that remorse can be mixed up with the grief, and it can prolong the grief. And it might even be the grief, it might even be remorse and not grief. So forgiveness is one of the biggest ones. Do whatever you can, give it back or to equalize it. And if you can't make it up to the person that you did something to, uh, do it for somebody else, or teach that. Teach that to other people. Always be at peace with all your relationships, so you don't have it until somebody dies and then feel that remorse. Number seven, have compassion for yourself if you did create that situation. You were probably having a bad day, you were in fear, or you were acting out of survival. When people are happy, they don't behave badly. They behave wonderful, they're kind, they'll do anything for you. So you know that when somebody cuts you off on the highway, they're being snippy and snarly, they're having a bad day. So try not to take it personally, have compassion, and if it's you that's doing that, just start, take a nice deep breath and going, okay, I don't need to be in this situation. I could, instead of going from fear and survival, I can just say to myself, I am safe, all is well in my world, and that is going to come from a place of gratitude and love. Number eight, use your guilt to guide you toward making amends. So I always like to use the example of the lady from Mad who uh, I think it was her daughter was killed by a drunken driver. And the lives that she saved just by, even though that didn't run her over, that person ruined her life by taking her daughter or child away from her. So if you feel like you've done something and you're feeling guilty and you're in grief about that, you can make that good. You can make that up. So maybe ask your guides and angels, what can I do to make myself feel better and make up for that? Number nine, this is the Buddhist way of dealing with an event that happened to you that you don't like. It doesn't have to be a big trauma, it can be the small thing to a big thing. Write the story of this 3 times. So the first time you write the story, it's from your point of view, first person singular. This is, I was walking down the street one day and this person leapt out of the bushes and attacked me. Okay. Second time, you write it as if it's something to happen to somebody else. Natasha was walking down this one day and somebody leapt out and attacked her. It gives you a slightly more remote way of looking at the event, because remembering that you did create this on some level to get a gift. We're always doing these events and having these losses so that we can learn the lesson, and hopefully you will get the lesson. The third way to write this event, and it's the funniest thing that's ever happened. So this sometimes, this part of doing this therapy takes a little time. You've got to feel ready when you're out of the first throes of the raw pain in the beginning. So when you're ready to do that, write it as though this thing is a big joke. And really, I kind of like to see the universe and God or the higher power as a comedian. He's messing with us for sure. So try and see the humor in this, because that humor will definitely break down that big trauma kind of minimize it. It's not minimizing the event, the impact it had on you, but it's recognizing that, oh yeah, that is kind of funny. And yeah, I did learn that. And I'm never going to do that one again. And I can teach my children and my friends not to do that. So I can really benefit from this. And once you get to the place where you can bring her into something, you know that you're on the road to healing and that thing isn't having that impact on you anymore. Number 10, remember you are only human. You're imperfect, thank God. I love you all because you've all got these different personalities and we're all really going through the same thing, but we're showing up differently. And this is such a beautiful opportunity to find out who we are and how do we show up at this time. And remember that this journey that we life, we come from love, we come from spirit, we're going back to spirit, we're going back to love. And in the meantime, we're just meant to be having this wonderful adventure. So, it's good to feel the grief. It's good to know that you've been hurt. It's your spirit's way of telling you you need to take a little time just to be kind to yourself and also this new reality. Whatever the loss is, know that it's yours, it's personal, and you can cry and scream and shout as long as you like. But when it's done, put it back on the shelf again where it belongs and say, thank you. That reminds me, I got that gift out of that. So that had a purpose for me as well. So go ahead, grieve. It's good for you. And if you don't grieve, you know it's going to build and build and build. So we want to knock those things down so that we can be filled more with joy rather than pain and hurt. So thanks for listening. As you know, I always like to do a shout out at this point in the show to everybody that's still out there. Things are starting to open up or they're spouting up. I pray that you be very careful, still take all the precautions you can. But those people, the nurses, the doctors, I'm sure they're praying that we're going to be very careful because they don't want to be inundated with a second wave of people being very, very sick and putting their lives in danger. So the grief prayer I like is Hope Now. I think you're all familiar with that. And basically, it's just a simple mantra. And you can say this in any order that you like. I say, with me, I love you, I'm sorry, and I forgive you. And that really is a real empowering affirmation to say, especially when you're in grief. Because I think grief, a lot of grief is about forgiveness, but just really being very, very loving to yourself. So on Friday, this coming Friday, 3:30, I've got a very fascinating show with a friend of mine called Jose Hernandez and had a near-death experience back in 2000. We're going to be talking about that love and light that we go to that I've been talking about all along and showing some of his tech art that's just very healing on the soul. So I hope you'll all join me this Friday at 3:30. In the meantime, grieve, be compassionate, give, and love yourself to the ends of the earth. Namaste.